Welcome to Miniatures Rundown. I'm Kevin, and today we're building additional pylons. StarCraft, the tabletop miniatures game from Archon Studios, is the latest entry in an increasingly competitive and crowded tabletop gaming market. So what makes this game stand out from all the noise? In this video, and more upcoming, we're going to explore this game and everything that it offers to the discerning miniatures gamer. So what is it? If you're anything like me, you might have grown up playing StarCraft and StarCraft 2 on the PC. I personally have many hours and not a few forgotten homework assignments sunk into Brood War on Battle.net in the Web 1.0 days. But if you're not familiar with the setting, the story of StarCraft follows the exploits and interactions of three species in the Korpulu sector. The ambitious and nomadic Terrans, descendants of human colonists from Earth many centuries ago, the swarming and ever-evolving insectoid Zerg, and the enigmatic, technologically advanced, and psionically gifted Protoss. During the course of the StarCraft video game storyline, these races clashed, allied, and betrayed each other, even making enemies from within. I won't go into spoiler territory, since if you already know the story, you don't need me to recount it, and if you haven't, I won't do the disservice of ruining one of the best storylines in gaming. Go play them and enjoy. What sets the game apart, however, was the asymmetrical style play between these factions, and yet how intricately balanced the game often was. Something that real-time strategy games struggle with even to this day. Now, full disclosure, I love StarCraft. I love playing through the campaigns, I love playing LAN parties and online, and I especially love watching competitive StarCraft, despite the fact I'll never be able to play like that on my best day. I even take a small amount of stock in the rumor that the original StarCraft was intended to be a Warhammer 40k RTS, but the deal between Blizzard and Games Workshop fell apart before it could be realized. Now, to this day, I don't know how real that is, but it's fun to think that now with the StarCraft Tabletop Miniatures game, it's interesting to think that it's possibly come full circle. So now that StarCraft has entered meat space, what does that bring to the tabletop arena that makes it stand out amongst such juggernauts as Warhammer, Conquest, and Mantic games? Like any good work, it takes a lot of things that really work well in other spaces, adds its own flair, and lets it speak for itself. So I'll start talking about the thing that was really special about the game and adds strategic depth and simultaneously adds dramatic tension, keeping the action moving and helping both players enjoy the experience. The supply system. If you're familiar with the StarCraft video games, you know that supply is one of the most important things you need to pay attention to. It determines how big your army is, and if you try to exceed it, the UI will yell at you and tell you
must construct additional pylons.
On a tabletop, this functions as a way for the game to set the pace of the game. Every unit has a supply stat based on its size, which differs from unit to unit. Each mission has a starting supply value, which increases each game turn. This determines the units you can deploy onto the battlefield. The higher the supply, the more units you're allowed to have. As you lose models, the amount of supply you have on the table will decrease, which will allow you to deploy additional units. Supply also has an immediate gameplay impact. Most importantly, it determines who controls objectives. The player with the most supply within range of an objective controls the objective. Additionally, if a unit retreats from combat in the movement phase, it normally cannot shoot or charge. However, if a supply of the retreating unit is greater than the supply of the units it is engaged with, it can retreat without that penalty. Supply really is the thing that sets this game apart from other tabletop games out there. The next thing I think is really interesting is how you build your army. While it's not unlike any other game where you have points to spend, which, however, in StarCraft this is referred to as minerals to tie it into the video game, which is what you spend to add units to your roster. However, you also have an additional resource, Vespene gas, which is another pool of points you spend to upgrade your army by adding offboard assets, like a barracks, which provides a command point which is used to activate special abilities, and a special ability that some units can use on the battlefield. Now, onto the battle itself. In a concept pioneered by Parabellum Games, with Conquest, the Last Argument of Kings, nothing in your army starts on the battlefield. Instead, as units activate, they move on board from a friendly deployment zone edge, which, because the game uses alternate unit activations, means you get to react to what your opponent brings to the table. However, keep in mind the supply limit at the start of the game will be smaller, so bringing on a heavy hitter unit early might mean you don't have much to utilize until later turns. Movement in the game is handled differently than how you might be used to if you're mainly a Warhammer player. Instead of each model moving a number of inches equal to a movement statistic, a lead model is chosen and then moved. And then the rest of the models in the unit are placed within coherency with the lead model. This cuts down on the time needing to measure the path of each individual model. However, it does further abstract the movement of models across a battlefield. Units reduced to a single model have a higher movement statistic to represent the loss of being able to slingshot a model ahead of the lead model. If you're familiar with Star Wars Legion, this kind of movement might seem similar. And also, similar to Legion, the mission structure uses similar mechanics. As a part of army construction, each player brings 2 mission cards and 2 deployment cards. Then, as part of a draft process, players alternate vetoing and then choosing a single mission and deployment to use for that game. Combat will feel very familiar to anyone who's played a tabletop wargame in the past decade. It uses d6s to determine outcomes. If you roll a hit, then the opponent rolls a save, and applies any damage from unsafe hits. The spice from the game comes from the surge mechanic. If a weapon surge type matches a keyword from the target unit, a number of hits will automatically wound the target. Typically this is a D3, but it could be more. Overall, this game takes a lot of successful concepts from other games in this genre and puts a unique spin on them from seeing them on top of a very compelling setting that is beloved by many. The game is due out later in Q2 of 2026, and some of you may have gotten lucky and got your hands on advanced copies at Adepticon. I'm extremely excited to get the Founders Edition starter set in my hands and get to rolling dice. What excites you about the StarCraft Miniatures game? Let us know in the comments, and as always, if you like this content and want to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, don't run out of minerals.